I, so for those of you who are online, I hope that that's okay. That's, we're saving this for all the people who could not be here and for whatever reason. So first of all, thank you very much for being here tonight. This is really an important aspect of what we do in community. And we originally had these evenings set aside, like one every couple of months, just to sort of increase Israel education. But we found that obviously events of the world sort of overtook all the emphasis and moved it from the strictly information and education about Israel to the important events that happened in the last 12 days in that part of the world in Israel. So as we want to try to begin to understand the difficulties of the moment. We're not necessarily going to be successful all around, but we hope that we can bring some information to some people to allow one another the chance to grow. So in order to do that, I wanted to offer sort of tonight's goals as to what we hope to do. And this may be repeated more frequently than once every 2 months. So watch for it. And again, as the weather deteriorates, maybe we'll be more online. We'll see how that goes. But it's for those of you who can, it's always good to be here in community. And for those of us joining online, it's so great to have you with us. However, we can gather together in community. And again, if you feel comfortable, turn your screens on. If not, we won't see an image of you on the screen, but we know that you're there because participants can check the participant box, I think, and they can see who is participating tonight. First of all, we're here to take solace with one another because some people are deeply affected by what's been going on in Israel and the Middle East. Our community has a wide range of attitudes about Israel, and we want to try to make sure that we can really touch people where they are and let people sort of feel and experience the things that they will feel and experience. I think one of the things is we're not necessarily here to offer direction, but education. We're not here to offer propaganda, but we're here to offer information. We're here to really and to take our one another's really selves into consideration. We figuratively and practically want to take one another's hands and just hold one another, especially if we are aching. There may be people online or here in the sanctuary tonight who have relatives and who have friends who are deeply affected by what's going on in that part of the world. I can tell you that I have a great nephew who served as in Hebrew, it's called a Chayal Boded, which is a lone soldier. He was interested in maybe making Aliyah, maybe immigrating to Israel. He spent 2.5 years serving in the IDF, not doing frontline work, but doing work that was really important for the state and all. He left Israel about a year ago, came home, began to do some bartending in Brazil, I think, and he was back in LA at his home 12 days ago. On a Saturday morning, he got a call, and by Saturday evening, he was on a plane. He was not required to go, I learned, but he volunteered to go. He was asked if he wanted to come back. And so I'm sure that experience is replicated in a number of different households across not only this Jewish community, meaning Temple Beth El, but across all the Jewish communities here in Madison, whether affiliated or not, whether part of the organized community or individuals. So we have a lot of people who have ties to Israel. Again, we're going to disseminate legitimate, from my standpoint, news sources, just trying to making sure that we discern opinion from fact. And where their opinion, we can say, this is someone's opinion. And where it's an analysis, this is analysis. We might even be able to offer some prayers because we have some prayers ready to go, and I wanted to share them with you as well. I think it's important for us. I wanted just to establish some just general sort of ground rules for tonight's discussion. First of all, this is a secure and private setting. No one here should tweet or disseminate anything here from this place because we are just people wanting to share with one another. This is not something that we've told the media about. This is not something that we've advertised outside of our community. And so it's important to protect people that one of our members was mentioned to me. There's this thing called the Chatham House rule, And Chatham House is a place in Britain, I'm not mistaken, in London, that helps interfaith dialogue, intergroup dialogue. And they say, you know, we create atmospheres where there are individuals from various places, and we want to make it a secure private place. So I want to just to be sure that that's comfortable for everybody. Be here today. If anyone would like to talk more in detail about something, whether on the record or off the record, whatever, please feel free to contact me at a different point in time. Those are sort of the rules or the procedure for tonight. Anybody have any questions about any of that? Let me bring some more people into the room. There we go.
The screen behind you still has a message on it as well.
Yeah, if you just
Okay.
click on it,
Oh,
you'll get rid of it.
okay, that's, thank you for telling me. I would have neglected that. Yeah, okay, thank you. All right, everybody, good evening again. So actually what I want to do is to begin with a prayer. For those people who are online, I want to share my screen. And for those people who are here, you have the text in front of you. And this is called Peace, Please. And it's written by Rabbi Karen Kedar, who is a rabbi in the Chicago area, but has spent extensive time in the Middle East. And she has relatives in Israel. And so she offers this. And if you'd like to read it together, we can do that. Although if you're online, please remain muted. It just helps with the sound quality. So, but we can offer this together if we are here in this place. We gather together in faith and with hope to pray for peace and for the safety of the people of Israel. Help us, O Holy One, and protect us in our hour of need. Touch our hearts, lest they be hardened with despair. Guide our thoughts, lest they are overcome with fear. Bring healing to the wounded,
To those in mourning,
to those in fear, wisdom to those who lead. Yedid Nefesh, beloved one, reveal yourself and fill the world with your peace. Spread over us the shelter of your peace. Be quick, God of love, for the time has come. Have mercy upon us, eternal one of peace. I'm going to stop sharing. And now come back to this place. And again, I think that one of the things I want to do is to offer you all a chance to offer your reactions. This has been for many a very difficult 12 days. And if you care to share something personal, that's fine. Be sure to label it. And so we know especially to keep those confidential among members of this small community tonight. Maybe perhaps, and like my sharing with my nephew, I felt comfortable sharing about my nephew, my grandnephew, a little while ago. And so that's an example, could be an example of something that we feel, something that has happened to us. And if you are online, please use your electronic hands, or you can raise your hands. I'll try and watch for people here in the community and watch for people on screen. So really, this is just a time to offer your own reactions, again, because of the extraordinary nature of what we've experienced in the last 12 days.
I do have a question. What are the parameters of the recording? Where does that go? Who is that open to?
So this recording is really for members of our community and not intended, and we're not going to be disseminating it outside of our community. In other words, it's for people who would have been here, but given other circumstances, they're not.
So the entire congregation?
This congregation, right. Right. Thank you. I hope that that's okay. Okay, good. All right. And for those of you who are here, speak loud so the owl can pick you up.
Well, I'll start because I do not have close friends or family, more distant connections in Israel that were close enough to be horrified. And I guess the thing that struck me at a distance is being surprised by the people who offered support without a lot of attempt to justify a position, or not just offered support, and the people who didn't. And the worries I have about the growing anti-Semitism. For those of us who have compassion and empathy, both for Palestinians and Israelis, and have lots of questions about the Israeli government, it's a very complicated issue, but we still are loyal and believe Israel has a right to exist and to defend itself. And when I start to talk to particularly my very progressive left-wing friends, it's a difficult conversation, frankly, because it's a little too simplistic in terms of decolonization and apartheid, and it's just like African Americans here. So it stirs up all that stuff in a much, much more immediate way than has been the case without this eruption.
Thank you. Let me just, I just have to break in and ask for people online, can you hear all right? Great, thank you very much. Okay.
Can I build on that point with a similar struggle that I've been having? So, I'm somebody who I do view myself as very progressive. I grew up in New York and like a proud, like stereotypical New York liberal Jew. And
There are a bunch of us here tonight, I'm sorry.
we should have all sat in one row.
Whoa.
And I for the last 15 years, I've also worked in Democratic politics and I work with a lot of progressives. And I have found myself really struggling in these last almost 2 weeks with people whose views I do think are simplistic and are using words that I would consider anti-Semitic and about the situation. And I found it to be incredibly difficult, especially with finding communities like this where we can really have an outlet with each other, because I have difficulty having that outlet especially with people that I work with or might need to work with again or in the future. It's been very hard. And I mean, it sounds almost trite to talk about that, because at the same time, my wife did not grow up Jewish, and having to have a conversation with her last Sunday as she's worried about our son who's in kindergarten here for Sunday school, and having to have those conversations with her for the first time is also difficult on the completely other side of things. So,
Well, as the third New York Jew.
I'm shocked we spoke first.
And I've been here 40 years,
You haven't lost the
No,
accent.
not at all. But I would like help in response. I would like sort of almost skillful scripts for how to navigate. I mean, I have the same experience that you both do. And how do you put in words both the compassion and the fact that this is outrageous? But to recognize, when people say, well, they had it coming, things like that, how actually do you respond to that skillfully? And that's what I'm hoping we can together come up with some words to be helpful.
I think that if I can break in, I would think that there are ways to do that. It is difficult as a Jew, because as a Jew, we tend to empathize very much, right? And we try to say, I feel your pain and I feel your pain, and because you want to. And we are challenged to carry both difficulties and joys at the same time. One of the reasons I gave you tonight a copy of Tom Friedman's op-ed piece, I thought would be very helpful. I'm going to put that on the screen. Just for the people online, please bear with me for just a minute, but I want to put up a link on the screen, or in the chat room rather, so that you can copy this into your browser so you can see this particular piece. And I think that, where's my Zoom link? Here we go. So chat, there we are. Right, so I'm just gonna put this here. This particular piece I thought was masterful, as many of Tom Friedman's pieces are, in helping us understand that we have been at a particular moment in time. Things shift, right? We are attacked on October 8th or 7th rather, and we feel the pain still. And many of us Jews are not able to move off of square one. And we know, I think, as you may have said, that there are other reasons why we have compassion for the other peoples in the region, right? And still, we have to be willing to say to ourselves, can we soothe ourselves? Can we grow stronger and at the same time hold our compassion for, say, the Palestinians as distinct from Hamas, which is one of the, I think, the distinctions that Friedman makes in his piece. So I think that that's really important to try and do. I gave you the link. You don't
Yeah.
have the article, but I gave you the link. There's another piece that I did give the folks here. And I'm trying to think if that might be one of the links as well. Let me work for this just a second, please. No. So what I want to do is to tell you about a link, an article, and I'm sorry I don't have the link for this. But
Rabbi?
Yes.
Just as an FYI, you have to subscribe to New York Times in order to view it. So I don't have it up right now, just I can get to it later, but right now it's not shareable.
I understand that. And so what I did for this educational purpose, I actually took that article and I turned it into a Word document. I will admit to that. And I did that this morning. It should be
I'm a
here.
subscriber, I could share it.
Well, people who are subscribers can give gifts, right?
Yeah.
So,
many of them.
right. So let me bring up this particular piece here. I'm going to put up this piece online. I'm going to share this document and we can actually, let's go through it together perhaps, because I think it's actually quite instructive. Yeah,
I don't know if I want to go through the whole document. because
Okay.
we have it.
yes. Well, some do and some don't. That's
Okay.
the point.
So,
Yeah.
all right.
But I'm going to put it up there on the screen so people can at least get the reference information. And they can then try and find it. And if you need to, please email me. I will email you a copy of this particular document, okay? This is an op-ed piece by a person who is a former IDF major in the reserves. And it was written, or it was published rather, on October 13 in the New York Times. And again, I have a Word document copy only for educational purposes and only for purposes within our community. And I would love to share that with you. If you email me, I will send you a Word copy of this document. But he writes, "I'm going to war for Israel. Palestinians are not my enemy." And I think that's, again, instructive for each of us. And Steve, I appreciate your caution. Thank you.
Yeah, I have trouble in terms of defending what's going on or explaining to other people what's going on. I have trouble understanding how Israel is going to eliminate Hamas in a context of urban warfare where massive civilian casualties are inevitable. And I don't see either that Israel has a plan for what to do with Gaza afterwards.
Or at least we haven't heard.
We haven't heard word one.
Yeah.
And I do think that the government that we were so upset about,
Mhm.
which created some of the conditions out of which this occurred, and it's inexcusable. But the situation in the West Bank, in Gaza, it's going on a long time, and it was getting much worse under Netanyahu and the right-wing government. And those are the very same people. I know that there have been other people pulled into the war cabinet, but we haven't heard. I mean, if I were looking at it from the outside, I'd say, well, these people were bad before and they're bad now. They're just going to champion a major military invasion of an urban situation where there are tens and hundreds of thousands of people
And no escape.
and no escape and no water and no food and no medicine. That seems to me to be, I can't defend that. I can't explain it. I can't begin to say, well, yeah, but Israel has the right because their people were hurt.
So let me try and begin a response. And it's also responding to what Susan is saying too, because I think we each want a way to respond that makes sense. And one example, well, one thing I would say is, yes, it's going to be terrible times in the near future. And we're going to feel very difficult, as you are expressing. That's for sure. This is not going to cure that situation. But I think we also have to be sure that we are completely up to date with accurate news information. Specific illustration would be the explosion at the hospital.
Oh, yeah.
The other night, right? The quickest people to jump on that were the people that Biden were going to see when he had just barely, hadn't even left Andrews Air Force Base yet. And the news came over and still he came, right? And so that was proven to be the reaction to that explosion, that bombing, however you want to term it. And terms do mean things, so we have to be very accurate in what you're saying. Like that incident was different than what many news outlets had reported initially. And yet Israel gets the blame, even though it's apparently was not Israel's fault. But even as I say that, there are people who would say, well, how can we trust the United States, intelligence gathering? Is that really accurate? And are we ever going to know what happened with accuracy? I don't know. So part of me says, yes, we're in for really bad times.
Well, even if.
Another-
Worse than that, though.
Yeah.
Go ahead,
Sorry.
Erica.
I mean, I can't remember who first came up with the phrase, this is not only immoral, what Israel is doing in retaliation, but doesn't seem strategically wise. Who is advising and how? What do we not know? Because there have been lots of people who've written about Israel's walking into a trap. And it's a trap that was deliberately set so that peace cannot happen in the Mideast. And the Saudi, Israeli agreement goes down the tube. So I would take some exception to a response that says it will be difficult, but maybe it will get better. I mean, I personally want to say, I can't stand to see what Israel is doing now. And there's a lot about why Gaza is in the place it is now that historically is important to know about, to understand that this isn't a simple issue. But I can't help but I'm kind of on a soapbox right now, but for the Teal team, the neighborhood Democratic team, we're discussing McCraney's book, How to Change Minds. And it reminded me as a retired psychologist of, all the work we learned about motivational interviewing. And at the first step, that you never change people's minds with facts alone. And if you don't have relationship, and you don't have genuine interest in what they have to say, not just what you have to say. So here I am going off on a rampage, but it's very hard to listen when there's so much you want people to know, and you're ambivalent yourself, So I'm not that's not really a satisfactory answer, but I personally couldn't say things will be difficult and hopefully they will get better, because I think they're going to get much worse. And I don't think Israel is proceeding wisely. I really don't.
I mean, but to me, there's several issues here, but there's the short term and the long term.
Yeah.
And there's the short term of what to do right now.
Yeah.
And that's different than the long-term strategy. And the mission of Hamas is to annihilate Israel.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what are,
And we know that because they wrote it down.
They wrote it down.
Literally.
That's
Yeah.
something our friends need to know,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
That they
Right,
don't know.
that's what it says.
Yeah.
So, and I'm trying to think of alternatives. Frankly, I'm trying to think of alternatives to what Israel is doing. I mean, I just don't even know what they are. my imagination is stymied.
Well,
And I think, we have to realize it's not up to us necessarily to interpret for the world, but we do have to sort of be with our friends. Taking Erica's comment, we have to listen to our friends in the community who share her opinions and who may differ from her and her opinions or from any of us. And we have to agree to dialogue together and not break down over these matters.
Oh, sure.
Absolutely.
But I do want to just point out this thing that in the long term, we have to do something totally different than we've been doing clearly. The government needs to go, there needs to be, but that's separate from from what's actually happening right now. And I mean, it would be helpful to think if there was something else they could, maybe you have an idea.
Well, even Thomas Friedman said,
Yeah.
if Israel said, you know what, If you give us the hostages, we're not gonna go into Gaza.
Exactly.
We're not gonna invade Gaza.
Or
And we'll stop the bombing of Gaza, or we'll open the channels for
Yeah.
humanitarian aid, we'll open the water and the food and so on and so forth. I mean, even if they said, we'll establish a safe zone for
I agree.
Palestinians, civilians, and I would say, just start with mothers with children. Just start with mothers with children
absolutely.
and let them go out. And then maybe there's Hamas mothers with children, maybe so, but I mean, you have to take a risk somewhere along the line.
Well, and
I'm
one
not
thing,
disagreeing with you,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
it doesn't deal with the Hamas issue.
No,
It
it
deals
doesn't,
with the
it-
deeper Hamas
it
issue.
does
that they were
not,
sworn-
no, but it
And-
begins to deal with the Palestinian
yeah.
issue.
And what it does, it takes away a propaganda tool
Yes,
for Hamas and for other governments of the Middle East.
Yeah.
Who would say, oh, those Israelis, they're doing it again.
Yeah.
Right. Did I see a hand up over here? How about, go ahead, Beth.
I'm trying to remember what I was gonna say. I was wondering, I agree with you. I was wondering, and I read sort of ambivalent things about what Israelis are thinking. I think there's some trepidation about this ground war idea.
Mhm.
But I wonder if, I mean, this is a fantasy world, but if that were to happen, what would the Israelis think? I mean, would they, in the end, that's what has to have, something like that has to happen. Well, not in the end, but there's always such a call for macho toughness
Mhm.
in all these things.
Revenge.
And I can't imagine them saying, you're right, let the moms and the kids come, it's hard to imagine that that would be okay in this climate of, boy, we're gonna get them. Good,
Right, we have to move away. What you're saying is that revenge is not the right motivation. What I
Yeah.
think I'm hearing you say.
Well, revenge in the end is gonna make things so much worse, it helps nothing. But I think in these situations, it seems like that's always the point of view. Ultimately, I mean, I know it's to supposedly make things safer. But it does nothing about the root causes to make things better in the future.
Let me ask if there's anyone online. I haven't seen any hands raised online, and if you're on screen or even if you're off screen and you'd like to say something, please respond, please check in. Let's pause for a second and let's see if anybody online has something they wanted to offer. Yeah, Joanna, go ahead. Unmute yourself.
Okay, yeah. I speak with somebody in Israel very frequently. And the last time I spoke to her, which was a couple of days ago, she said that they do expect a response from Israel and they don't know when it's going to happen. And all the schools are now closed. And I don't know what to, I mean, and she expressed all the same feelings that everybody else is, because these are human beings in there and they're going to have, they're going to be murdered in some sense, but nevertheless, Israel is expecting to retaliate. So that's where it's at, as far as I know at this point.
Other comments? Thank you. Yes, go ahead, Allison.
Hi, I'm concerned because I saw some stats about people under the age of perhaps 35 who did not necessarily grow up with an allegiance or even knowledge of Israel in the same way we who are older than that did. And so I'm curious, Rabbi, with your high school students, kind of along the lines of what somebody's idea was of having some talking points, is how will you guide them on how to respond to their own friends when they themselves are not really steeped in a love of Israel, perhaps in the same way as we who have grown up with that idea?
So briefly, I would respond to say that our high school students in this community fall into 2 or 3 different categories. Ones whom we touch, meaning ones who are connected to our programs, ones who we don't touch, and ones who couldn't care less. sadly. The ones whom we touch, it's hard enough to deal with. Because those people, with a week ago last night, at Midrashah, for example, we met with the high school students, and I think there were 14 or 16 high school students in the sanctuary at Beth Israel Center. And some did not know what was going on. Yes, right. Ouch is right. Some did not know what was going on. I mean, there are people who have different levels of awareness, and I understand that. And some were speaking about the anti-Semitism that they're experiencing at school, and some knew a lot because their parents made it a point to talk about it. So even within the community of people whom we can touch, there are people with varying levels of knowledge and education. Anybody who's a teacher, anybody who has contact with young people, need to really bring them under your wing and somehow maybe we should have the talk. Maybe for Jews, there is the talk, which includes Middle East issues and anti-Semitism. And not to say that we're going to give them one particular point of view, but it really is up to us to give them a whole range of different views and to give them the sense that out there in the world, it's okay to have different views. And again, as I said earlier, Jews juggle all the time. We always bear with us these conflicting views. And maybe that's why it's one of the reasons it's so hard to be a Jew, as they say, because maybe we just do this because we have. But it is important. It's in our DNA, could be. But it's important for us to know that the students fall into these different kinds of categories. And we have to be aware of so attuned that when we encounter our young people, to try and find ones whom we can talk to. Because some of them are really just checked out. Some are tuned out. Some are so into whatever they're doing. It was interesting because one of the things that for those people who are members of Bethel, a week ago, we sent out a social media warning. And we said, please be sure to have your teens especially, and your kids, but even everybody, to distance yourself from social media. A, it's really addictive. B, it's so consuming. And C, a lot of the information on social media may be false, not to mention, theoretically reputable news outlets, which have their varying degrees of accuracy and bias, of course, as well. So, I mean, it's so hard to be a consumer of correct information these days. That's what also makes it difficult. I really appreciate the question. It's an important question. Thank you, Allison, because it seems impossible, but each of us know or be able to touch at least one person whom we can influence and who we can give some sanity to, but maybe.
We're talking about how difficult it is and how difficult it is to create a dialogue. And I'm wondering if on the positive side, anybody has had a really meaningful dialogue with somebody who thinks very differently, whether it's a teen or an adult, and how that's gone, how you've done it. I'm just curious.
Well, I am having some ongoing conversations with my daughter, who is going to be 29 very soon, and we're very close. So it's we're not at each other's throats or anything. And although she has some feelings of loyalty to Israel, she's talking about feeling ashamed by Israel's actions and not knowing what to do with that. And from her sense of things, even the establishment of Israel was, removing people from land, etc. So, which was part of the reason I was interested in this class too, just to sort of educate myself more. But so we have been talking, and I guess what's good about it is that she was able to hear my feelings, and my feelings aren't, just one way. I mean, I feel for the Palestinians. I agree with what you're saying, Steve. I do not, I'm, horrified by thinking of what's happening there. but I'm also have such a feeling for what, for Israel and my own connections and my sense. I was hearing somebody say, you know, today that, you know, Jews are like 0.2% of the world's population, half of them are in Israel. And, you know, it's like, this is, I mean, I feel it's part of my family. So anyway, I just, a long rambling to say that I felt like that conversation was good, but difficult for me.
Steve, go ahead.
Yeah, I think the first thing would be to just listen to what their concerns
Yeah,
are.
right.
But the bottom line for me would be, I wouldn't have anything to say to them, you know, to give them, you know, guidance like a wise parental figure or something like that. I couldn't do that because I don't know exactly. I was wondering, Rabbi, whether or not you find any, whether the Israeli government or there are people in Israel who are following some kind of religious inspiration or guidance. We are confronted with utter, pure evil, no question. What does our tradition tell us that we should do when we are confronted? Self-defense is a clear, obvious human right, and it certainly is part of our religious tradition too. Self-defense, no question. But self-defense carried out over a long term, you know, weeks and months, and establishing a siege of a city and attacking with these modern weapons. How do we fit them into some kind of, you know, Torah-based framework of morality? What is the guidance for our inner morality? I know Israeli soldiers are taught, and they, I would say 85% anyway, believe, I don't want to kill civilians. I don't want to kill innocent people. And yet, how are they going to tell who are the innocent people? You know, if you lined up 25 people from Gaza, how do you know which one is the Hamas, you know, sympathizer? So anyway, any religious thoughts about that?
Can we
Yeah.
hold that for a minute?
Sure.
Because I wanna ask if there are other people who have had other dialogues with people, and I wanna come back to your question. Is that okay, Steve?
Sure.
So, anybody else have dialogue with a young person with whom they're familiar, a child, a teenager, coworker, you know, different generations, X, Y, or Z, you know, what have you found, if any?
I had the opposite experience where I had a horrible conversation with my father today, who's still in the Upper West Side. So he's like every Jew I talk to thinks that like everything Israel is doing is wrong, and like and using the word blame, and it was driving me crazy, and I just like couldn't even handle it. So I mean, I think with young people specifically, this is like a long-term fear I have also, that we're approaching this generation of kids who are in high school now, who themselves and their parents and their grandparents, they're not going to have any firsthand oral history of the Holocaust and understand why there's a nation state that cares so much about its security, even more so than other nation states. And to Steve's point, this now difficult doesn't even sum it up position where you have this historically oppressed people, almost more than any other people, who is now in this incredible dominant position over another people. And it's one of the things that makes this whole situation so just heartbreaking and, you know, mind numbing for me. I don't know where to start, but to answer your question, I had a bad conversation with my dad.
So was your dad saying that he and everyone he knows there is
Yeah, I mean,
blaming is?
yeah, I mean, I had to walk him back from saying that, like, you know, and I think all of us would have been here 2 weeks ago to talk about how much we hate the government, and their views on the judiciary, right? So we're all in the same boat. But he was basically saying like, well, they were provoking this, and like, you know, they're not blameless here too, which I thought was just such terrible victim blaming, like, that I couldn't even handle it. But yeah.
Anybody online have a response to the question about recent conversations you might have had?
I think can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
I think the more successful ones I've had is when I point out Hamas's charter and it's explicit anti-Jewish language. When it comes to what Israel is doing in Gaza now is when the conversation gets harder, but when people speak of Hamas versus Israel, I think it's I've had a lot of success in referencing Hamas's charter. That seems to move a couple people at least.
Well, and again, I think it speaks to how evil Hamas is and how terrible the situation is that,
Yeah.
and Israel walking into a trap.
Yeah.
That they explicitly want the Palestinian civilians to die.
Yeah.
And so my heart just bleeds for these civilians who are here, who are getting attacked by everyone and who Hamas doesn't even want to help because this helps their cause in a way. So
Sanford, please. Sanford's online.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
We
Yeah.
can.
Thank you. First of all, it's a very interesting conversation, and I know being on Zoom, I'm sorry I couldn't get there in person. It really was my intent to be in person for this meeting. So for those you don't know, I obviously have a lot of vested interest. I have family in Israel. My sister actually just got out. She was living up in Zikron Yaakov. She just made it back yesterday. My daughter's still choosing to stay in Tel Aviv. Understanding the situation. So I do have a lot of vested interest. I will tell you, when all this stuff first happened, the conversations, people, I mean, just about every single friend, my text on my phone, my emails, but mostly text messages like blew up in a heartbeat. Oh my God, what's happening? I can't believe. There was a lot of sympathy, empathy. What can we do? We're praying, all this good, positive stuff. So it was a very nice. That was the initial response was very nice, and certainly whether from people from work, coworkers, staff, etc. Because I think a lot of folks do know that my daughter does live in Tel Aviv, has been there for many years. I'm still a bit numb, to be honest, just of the onset of the atrocities that took place. There's just no words. Unlike almost any other, most of the time it's government, it's conflict, it's so many other things. This is just outright hatred with no ifs, ands, or buts behind it. And I certainly feel for the folks in Israel, the challenges of how do you set your security? Because unfortunately, we do have a deep-seated basis of humanity in our belief structure that flies in the face of just doing anything even close to this. But at the same time, we're in a position that our own individual safety and security is at threat. As far as the talking to people and sharing with people, I haven't been personally any on the negative side of hearing from people. Most of the people, just want to offer their prayers. And my first response, when they say, "What can I do for you?" It's like, not what you can do for me, but please reach out to your senators and, et cetera. Obviously we need, we want the U.S. to be behind this. So this is initially, there was no U.S. positive response very early on. And so that was my, please reach out and we need to have a very strong backing. But as far as myself and personally just dealing with this right now, it's difficult. And the more I hear the news of what's going on, initially I didn't think such a bad deal, but the problem is what we all know is if this escalates, Israel, it's just not the Hamas. I mean, that is obviously how we have to fix that. It has to be fixed, and there's no easy solution. I mean, Israelis with humanity did in fact trying to educate, trying to give them jobs, trying to give them all the positives with the hope that showing the humanity to the peoples, this would be positive. Unfortunately, that doesn't erase the hatred by a smaller set of group that's obviously leading this whole, with Hamas that's leading it. So, I don't know what to do. My daughter, who is an extremely non-negative, non-violent. She's vegan. She wouldn't even want to take eggs from a chicken. For my goodness gracious, you're abusing the chicken. She has told me things this last week that I couldn't even imagine would come from her mouth, of just how the amount of hatred in the response, from her gut, from seeing all the stuff that's going on. It's hard on her. And, she has to kind of shut off her source, her news intake, because it's, she, you know, just all the atrocities, she can't handle it. I mean, she's asking her friends to kind of help filter it down for her, but it's not an easy thing. I don't envy the position Israel's in, is all I can say. I don't know if that's answering the question, Rabbi, that you're exactly asking, but in terms of conversations, I would just say it's been very supportive from others.
Any other comments from folks online or folks here? I would tell you one little encounter that I had. Was it yesterday? I'm not sure. I think it was yesterday, but I'm not sure. For a long time, I've been a customer at a place called Steep and Brew, and it's a little coffee shop on the west side, and it's run by this Egyptian Muslim whose name is Saad, and he's great. Some of you may know him. Lovely guy. And because he knows I'm the rabbi here, he and I talk a lot about congregational life, because he is a layperson. I'm the rabbi of my congregation, and he tells me things about his imam, and I don't tell him anything about our leadership because I love our leadership. And but seriously, but we talk a lot, and I have met the imam on occasion, and I think it was yesterday, or it might have been Tuesday, when I saw Saad in the morning. It was Tuesday. I saw Saad in the morning. I had coffee with him and schmoozed a little while. And then by the time the afternoon rolled around and I had arranged to meet the imam, and he came here, and he and I had a gathering here, he and I. He's from Gabon, I believe, and he studied in Saudi Arabia. By that time, the hotel had exploded.
The hospital?
The hospital had exploded. Thank you. The hospital had exploded. And he and I could talk of nothing else. He and I could talk of nothing else except to say that Hamas is evil, and they think, most people in his mosque think that Hamas is evil, and how we have to get past that. At least Jews and Muslims in this country have to get past that kind of evil, which is breaking us apart. Because he acknowledged that his people feel the same thing. He said he had just come from leading late afternoon prayer, and he said, I told my congregation that I was coming to talk to the rabbi, and the rabbi and I were going to get together, and they were so impressed. And I didn't think it was so impressive. He and I were just religious leaders. We're just talking with one another. But I think the most important thing is that we are talking. And I hadn't really seen him since the pandemic. We've been in touch a little bit by email, but seeing him in the flesh was awesome. And our commitment to try and do something together as Muslims and Jews in our American environment, where we are both being persecuted and we're both facing attacks, is something that we need to keep in mind as well. Steve, to answer your question, what does Jewish wisdom teach us? So in Pirkei Avot, it says, let us be seekers of peace and pursuers of peace. But it doesn't tell the mechanism on how to do that. There are other places in Torah where it says when you make war against a city, you're not allowed to kill the trees, but you are allowed to make war. You are allowed to lay siege against a city. Now, for the Torah's purposes, they're talking about the conquering of the land, 2,500 years ago, or whatever number of hundreds of years ago the Torah sets us in. So it may or may not apply to today, but there are many parts of philosophy in Judaism that talk about what a just war is. And we have this concept called a just war. And a just war is when you are endangered, when your society is endangered, and therefore you are permitted to go to war. Now, there are certain strictures about going to war in a Jewish context, but I think that we've seen too, and the Holocaust is just one of many illustrations where we can think back in time, where if we go to war, we're going to war against pure evil. We've said that, used that word before here tonight about Hamas. And they don't care whom they injure. It can be seen. They don't like, I'm not sure whether they like their people or not. They don't care about human life. Human life doesn't seem to be very important to them. And as we've said in their charter, it says explicitly, they're out not only to destroy the state of Israel, they're out to destroy Jews as well. So how can we not respond? The question is, how can we respond wisely? What's the wise way of going to war? And you've brought up important points before tonight about, is this, going to enter Gaza and going to enter, and I think Israelis use the phrase cut the grass.
Well, that's
Right.
before. Now they're saying.
Now it's like, we're gonna
Yeah,
use, not just,
literally.
we're not gonna just mow the grass.
Yeah.
We're gonna use,
Roundup.
Roundup, right, and take out everybody. The problem with Roundup is it kills everything,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
So how do they,
Poison.
and it's absolutely poison and it's carcinogenic to those people who use it. Maybe it's the perfect metaphor.
It is.
Maybe it's the perfect
Mhm.
metaphor we have tonight. That's my personal opinion. I'm not necessarily advising it, but it's something we might, just came to mind. Because it really hurts the user and hurts that which is being used upon. And I think that's very difficult. Very difficult. And so we have to, with all the people who are saying, let's be wise about this. And we have to also say, let's be wise about this.
I
That
have
was
two,
one-
I have
I'm sorry.
two things that I also want to say, and one is the effect of media.
The effect of what?
Media. I mean, to see atrocity after atrocity after atrocity, and obviously it does draw media attention because it's great optics, and it's great, it moves people, so, every network is gonna cover deaths of the innocent wherever they are. And that's something I think, we have to think about. But in addition to that, it's like how in practical terms, I would like to hear the Israeli government, not to give away their explicit plans on a strategic level or even a tactical level, but overall, where do they think they're going? I think Israel would be suppose Israel talked to Jordan and said, can we arrange some way to have humanitarian aid? Could you help us administer that? And then publicize the heck out of that. If Jordan would be willing. I know Egypt has their problems because they don't want these Palestinians running into Egypt, and Jordan doesn't want them in there either. But could you help us? At least we have ties with Jordan. Could we reach out and see? And even if it's a failure, the fact that Israel is reaching out to other governments to try to help, to the Palestinian Authority. Could you help us to administer some humanitarian aid to the people in Gaza? If that would be the consensus and we see that happening, I think Israel would be in a far stronger position than they are now. So just my thought.
Other comments?
Or when you were talking about, I'm sorry, go ahead, sis.
Well, I'm gonna switch sort of levels altogether, so if you have a,
Oh, it's, yeah,
Go
I
ahead.
was just a comment about the prayer where I kind of was jarred at the line. All of it is something we can't disagree with, but wisdom to those who lead. It's certainly not happening, And yes, we would pray for it, but
It's
it's gonna
something
take
to
a
pray
lot
for,
more
that's
than
right.
prayer, I'm sorry, go ahead.
no, because I'm gonna go to sort of a different place, which is the personal for us living in America. And so I grew up in Brooklyn at Congregation Beth Elohim, which you probably are familiar with, which was kind of high Episcopalian. It was one of the very old Reform congregations,
High reform,
high Reform.
right?
Very much not Zionistic. We are people in diaspora and we live in diaspora. And it's really frankly only through my daughter, who I think you just met last week, Amelie, who
Oh,
joined with her family, that I actually became interested in Israel and developed really a relationship and a feeling about it. So I'm going to just sort of backtrack to an experience I had in Brooklyn 3 years ago, which is my husband and I were walking in Bedford's Drive, essentially to pick up our grandson, and, dressed like this. And somebody walked up to us and said, I kill Jews. That's what I do. I kill Jews. And we were on Nostrand Avenue on a very busy street, and this person just sort of sidled up to us. And Richie sort of started to turn, and I didn't want to lead him to the nursery school, so we're trying to figure out exactly what to do, because even on a busy street, somebody could take a knife and stab you, somebody could shoot you on a busy street, whatever. So we sort of ducked into a drugstore. it's sort of on some level, and I think about, I have a big wing of my family, like your father. They live in Park Slope, but you know, there was nothing identified. We were not wearing kippah. We were not wearing anything. And so you can think you're not Jewish, but you are. And you know, in the eyes of the world, you are Jewish. And there's something about so when I think about the annihilation of Israel, it gives me a lot of existential dread myself. I mean, just for my own safety right here, like first, on some level, I feel like the existence of Israel, my own existential existence, depends on that.
It's a buffer.
A safety way.
Right.
Yeah.
Linda is waiting with her hand raised patiently. Linda online, go ahead.
Yeah, I just, some of the later comments I think are getting us into a little different area, but it's an area that worries me. You know, I don't know if some of you haven't seen TV today, but missiles from Yemen missiles that were shot from Yemen up toward Israel were shot down by a U.S. Navy ship. The U.S. is now involved in this. We are worried about some of our embassies and so on and so forth. And I'm not saying that to say we ought to back off, but I am saying that as this does not get clarified or calmed down, that we just have worldwide problems, as I understand it, as I've been on. Something came through on my screen saying that the president said that aid to Israel is needed for global stability and U.S. security, and I really wonder whether a lot of people believe it's necessary for global stability. I think maybe a lot of people believe the opposite. I think what we need to is I find it hard to believe there was a whole lot that we who are generally very supportive of one side can do to get those who are not committed to one or another of those sides, who believe in one another, in what one or another of those sides says. I don't think we have the ability right now to solve a whole lot. You know, I think we need to try to get, as Steve started saying, you know, let's talk to Jordan or other folks and say, well, we'll give you the money, but will you try to dole it out? You have at least more support among some populations than we could ever have at this point because of our historic support of Israel, which nobody is saying we ought to say we don't have. But I think that it's like Putin saying, you know, the hospital, the U.S. says they bomb the hospital and Putin says the other side. I mean, if you're supporting one side or the other, you just don't believe it, depending on the source. And I think that for a lot of people, we need to convince, we're not the source that can do that. We've got to get some more neutral sources involved in this. Obviously, the president was trying to get Egypt, Saudi involved as a source who might be able to do this. But the other thing we have to do, besides just get less committed sources, if you will, is to make it plain that we are for a two-state solution. That's the only thing that's going to be able to bring some of these folks around, is clear support for that. And that we make it very plain, and I think the president probably did when he was in Israel, is to say, we need to do that. And we are going to just keep pushing you, Israel, until you stop some of the stuff you've been doing and get us into a situation where we can have a two-state solution. So it's this thing is very scary to me in a sense that within a week, I mean, it has just exploded, not just to the Middle East, but to a world, very much a worldwide situation that is pretty fragile.
So I just put a couple of links into the chat, and I would commend them to you, not because I agree with all of them, but I think because they point out the difficulty that I think we all have in finding correct information. Online, you have it in the chat, and you can capture those URLs here I gave people here a copy, a printed copy that you can go home and find them on your own. But the first piece is from Al Jazeera, which actually has turned out to be, in some instances, quite a reliable, I think, news source. Depends upon the author. But I thought this was a very credible analysis, the first piece that you see by Joe Macarone. I don't know if that's the correct pronunciation of his name. Here is that link to the Time Friedman's article. What Sanford says is, yes, that there was a paywall there. I'm happy to share a copy of that article with you. I will send it to you if you let me know that you want that. And this third link is a link to minutes, I guess, or whatever, not quite minute, there must be minutes of a meeting of the United Nations, right? What the third committee, and they have, it's a very long post. And they go through remarks from almost every country who's a member of the UN who might sit on this committee. It's very long. And there is such animosity toward Israel and the United States. And it's instructive to read. Again, I think it's important for us to share this information because I think it's important for us to know what's out there and the hatred that is out there and the anti-Semitism that is out there, anti-Zionism that is out there. So again, I don't commend it to you, the facts, but I commend it to you as a place to sort of don't wallow too long. But it's a difficult thing to read. But I wanted to share that with you nonetheless. Other thoughts, this is the beginning. Again, these dialogues, again, our education sessions were supposed to happen once every 2 months, just given my schedule and given everybody's schedule. But given the exigencies of what's happening in the world, I think we need to have these maybe every 2 weeks. At least bring people together so that they feel they have a community that they can rely upon. So we can finish up soon. If not, there's not so much more to say, except to say that perhaps in about 2 weeks, maybe we'll do this again and continue to be together as a community in sharing observations, views, experiences that we've had in the last period of time, and begin to learn more too about Hamas, about the situation everywhere that's going on. So we have Steve here and then Sanford online.
I found it useful to listen to Christiane Amanpour and Company, which unfortunately comes on at midnight, but she is getting very high level guests and they are a mixed lot, and some of them, Yair Lapid, for example, from Israel, and so people who are really knowledgeable about Israel and people who are also knowledgeable about the other side. I was very surprised to learn, for example, from the United Nations chief of humanitarian aid all over the world, that about 100 trucks per day of aid was coming in from Egypt to Gaza. That was now they're talking about letting in 20 trucks, but 100 trucks per day were coming in. So you can imagine the deprivation, the utter deprivation, and the sense of being trapped in this place is just overwhelming. So I just would, say it's another source of that people want to watch. I'm sure you can probably get it. You can probably download it.
Tape it and watch it.
Yeah, or you could. I think it's available online too. After the fact, so you can probably get it streamed.
Well, recorded.
Someone should watch it so that not everyone has to.
Yeah, right.
Send around an email in the morning.
Yeah.
Sanford, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you for attaching those. And it's not a surprise that I'm talking specifically about the United Nations comments. This is not a surprise to me, but just curious, as those that condemned Israel immediately after the bombing, when obviously the data has pretty clearly indicated this was self-inflicted. This was caused by the Hamas, and it's there. Do those same people who condemned Israel turn around with the exact same words and condemn the Hamas for killing the innocent people in the hospital? And there's not one word. They are so silent. Their silence is deafening.
And it's not just the UN. I mean, it's again like the people the progressives, which I count myself as one of, who we talk to and follow on social media, where then we're dead silent.
At least the chair.
And I'm sure I'm biased, but as soon as I heard about the hospital being bombed, my immediate response was failed Hamas missile, or intentionally Hamas shot it at the hospital to get sympathy of the world, because it was clear in that first 12 hours, 24 hours afterwards, there was such an outpouring of outrage of what they had just done, being so just despicable. There's just no words for it. And I literally said after I heard that, it's like, it wouldn't even surprise me if Hamas actually shot it at the hospital to try to turn get everyone to now hate Israel for bombing a hospital, when in fact, this is just something I couldn't even believe. And I'm very glad to see the evidence also clearly supports that. But it was just unimaginable to me.
But the hard part is that it doesn't, I mean, I was feeling like, I hope it's not Israel. Oh my God. I hope-
Yeah, I know.
And if they could just put this info out there, and I thought, it doesn't matter.
No, it doesn't
Right,
matter.
It doesn't matter.
No, it doesn't matter.
If you have a point of view and
Yeah.
you've decided whose fault it is, that's it.
Well, and again, the images, I think that the media part of that is, you see the images, and then that overwhelms everything, I mean, that just obliterates any thought, that goes behind it.
There's a piece of this though, for me, that when you talk about this, it's like, don't the Israelis and Americans and those who are friends of Israel have ad men and ad women who can do as well as the ad men and ad women from Hamas? I heard an hour-long thing by Dennis Ross last week on Jews from Democracy. And one of the things he said was the reason that Hamas did what they did along the Gaza border, along the kibbutz, the several kibbutz and the hostages, was they knew Israel would respond this way. They responded hysterically for 2 years. That's their attitude. From one, they spent 2 years trying to get one soldier back, and they gave up 1,000 people to do it. And so literally Ross was making the point that Hamas knew exactly how the Israelis would respond when they kidnapped 1,000 people of their own. And so it's like Israel is being suckered. And I think people have to step back and say, what's going on here? People are responding emotionally, thoroughly understandable. But it's like, are the Israelis, are they a puppet on somebody's string here that they're not thinking it through? Now we're going to clean out Hamas forever, which I agree with what Steve said initially is, I don't believe that's possible. All we're doing right now is taking a bunch of 8 to 10-year-old boys and making them into the people who are going to do this, try it again in 10 years. That's what we're doing. But I think there's just something wrong with the way it looks like Israel cannot get ahead of the enemies of Israel in terms of some of the public opinion stuff. And now with deep fake stuff, holy cow. Where's all that going?
You mean with artificial intelligence?
Yeah.
They could use to there.
And either audio or visual things which have been faked and will have people believing things which never happened at all.
Thank you, everyone. I want to end with this prayer, the legacy of Abraham. Again, I gave it to people here in print, and I'm going to put it on screen for us. This is not inspired by my meeting with the imam, but it is sort of indicative perhaps of one direction we should go. Because one of the things that we do, we have to fight for peace. We have to strive for peace in what we do. It's one of the many things that we do. It's not a panacea. It's not meant to take the place of the work of dialogue. But I want to share this with you, and it may be apt tonight for one small part of what it is that we hope to accomplish. So forgive me for sharing this, but I wanted to do this with everyone. This is not what I wanted to share with you on screen. Hold on just a second, please. I'm going to stop sharing and find the right screen. I apologize. This one. There we go. So I would offer this prayer, and if you'd like to read aloud, you may. O creating God, who fashions humanity and all other creatures, you formed us as stewards of your world wherein both war and peace are possibilities. You yourself pray that ours will be a peaceful existence in a peace-filled world. Help us fulfill this goal. O teaching God, who guides our ancestors and counsels all people, remind us, if you must, that as violence expands violence, peace can produce peace. Bring us to accept our role as those who pursue peace. O protecting God, who protects those in need, shelter us from the storms of the world and of the human heart. Show us the way toward hope and concord. O challenging God, who encourages the overcoming of adversity, place your Sukkot Shalom, your secure and peaceful protection, over the descendants of Isaac and Ishmael, the children of Abraham. Let it descend like a reassuring blanket of your love, and may it protect us as we work to solve conflict and strife between people and among peoples. Our joint religious traditions teach that our ancestors, Ishmael and Isaac, reunited to undertake the sacred obligation of burying their father. May we cousins in our day reunite with one another, not to bury any more dead, but rather to raise to life the prospects of peace and love for one another and our world. May we with sanctity undertake the tasks of bringing peace to your world, so that we may live out the blessings of peace that you intend. Good night, everybody. Please stay dry, stay warm this weekend, and we'll see you next time. Watch for announcements of our next time together. Goodbye, all.
Mm.